Okay. I need to do this. And there we go. Now we're in gallery mode. Questions, thoughts, challenges. Yeah, Dan.
Unmute. Excellent, John. Excellent. Loved it. Very well organized. I loved how you broke it down. Um, I gotta say, convicting, just flat out, I mean, you got to examine my life, got to look at what I'm doing. And I loved how you closed it with promoting the giving in the local community too, and it's gotten easier. That's easier for me because that's where I live. And so I see the needs. But I just loved how you broke down. And, we had a little side chat going. I don't know that you could see any of that, but I think it was Suzanne who said kingdom principle. And I had written that down. And, one of the things that I had is, I mean, I've got all the notes and all your verses, but I wrote down this is a core character trait of a genuine disciple. And I think, we always break down what is a disciple, but I think at the heart of that, how can you say you're faithful if your whole life is not devoted? And where our possessions are, is that's a lot of times where our heart is. And you can really, it's almost like put a thermometer. I can tell if the steak is done or not. Put it
Mm-hmm.
put it put a thermometer on your giving and your sharing, and how are you with your resources. And and I know years ago I did a teaching on, what is the proper financial model. I came out of a church when I was 19, 20 years old that taught a prosperity model, name it and claim it, all that. And it was hammered into you. If you don't give at least 10%, God won't even spit in your direction. That was the quote. And that you gave, the more you gave, the more you got. And it was all this kind of, like, it was all focused, so that all it did is promoted a prosperity mindset that the more I have, the more righteous I am, because the more God is blessing me. And then I came out of a Catholic tradition, and that was a poverty model in a lot of ways, where you swear off all possessions and you live like a pauper, and nuns and priests, and they have nothing. And you hammered it at the end, it's a stewardship model. You know,
Mm-hmm.
all we, if we treat it as, I don't own anything I have, all I am is a steward. I'm just passing through. Solomon says it perfectly. Everything you have, you're going to give to another. You acquire all your life just to leave it to another. And therefore, all I have a responsibility to do now is to steward it. Well, if I'm stewarding it, then it's just like, this isn't mine. God, how do you want me to use this? So thanks, John. I'm gonna, I, I really think this should become almost part of a mandatory core teaching. Just as like we have the kingdom of the gospel, and all that. I mean, this is the core of discipleship. This is at the center of what, in my opinion. So, enough said. But thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. One of the things that in looking through this, what does the New Testament say about the subject? That for me, the thing that stood out as I was going through preparing, for this was that verse about excelling at it, like getting really good at being a really good steward and having and building more and more abundance to be able to share and to be able to give and to get really good at that. And that can be, it's not there are people who make millions and millions and millions of dollars. They're really, really good at that, and they have a lot of abundance. But like Jesus said, the widow woman gave this tiny little bit, and she gave way more than all these other people did, right? And so it's about the mindset. If I may not be able to make a lot of money, but if I'm really good with what I do make and how I live, and I I work at getting even better at it, I am excelling. And I think that's just an incredible mindset to have, to think in terms of excelling at having abundance in order to help those in need so that, there are no needy. Uh, Suzanne.
Yeah, so much here. So we've been talking about this a lot over the last couple months about the word practice, right? Practice giving, because as we talked about, like the way you're going to excel in giving is by practicing it. It's just like anything else, right? So it's a mindset. And I also want to just say that it's really important to be prayerful about this and prayerful about the resources you have. It can be, you can easily fall into all this guilt. Like as soon as you started saying we should be working really, 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 really hard to make extra money so we can give it to people. And I'm sure, I don't know, I might not have been the only one feeling like this, feeling like, oh, I really hate that. I mean, because we can fall into this trap of feeling like we have to be workaholics and that nothing we do is enough, that we're not giving enough, we're not doing enough. And so God's not blessing us. We could fall into this trap. And that's why I say it's so important to pull the inty thing, right? We need prayer. We need to pray about it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's sort of twofold to me. You pray for God to provide you with money and resources and all these things so that you can help others, in a balanced way. But then you also pray for God to open up opportunities for you and to show you where you should be putting your time and energy. Like for me, like I work, like today, I just popped into the food bank to help for a couple hours. I volunteer there at the food bank and we help feed people. And it's something that's really in my heart to do. But like I was at yoga and I was thinking, oh, I want to go home, and because I have all this editing work I need to do. And I kept feeling prodded, like you should go to the food bank this morning and help out. And I went over there and I thought, okay, let me just find out if they really need me, because Wednesdays they usually don't. And so they were, oh, we're so glad you're here. We really need you today. I'm like, there you go. And so it's just like, it's just being prayerful and responsive to how God leads, because like you said, the giving isn't always monetary. Giving of our time is one of the most precious things we have. And also the whole idea of like, he who's faithful in little will be faithful in much. A lot of the giving that, at least to me, that I give seems on the outside to be really little. Like maybe I'm just going to go over and give my neighbor next door some tomatoes from my garden because I know she's having a hard time with her husband, and I just kind of I want to give a little bit of my time and attention to her, just, because I know that she's probably needs someone to talk to. So like it's just like you said, John, it's like this attitude of what does it mean to be a follower of Christ? Like, what does it mean to love other people like yourself, and how it's more blessed to give of anything that you have. I mean, one time I was at a conference and this woman came up and she said, I just absolutely love your earrings. And I just took them off and gave them to her. I mean, I loved them too, but there was just something like, something compelled me. And it also felt really good to like, not just to remind myself, I am not attached to material things. I could have my house burned down tomorrow, and, it'd be nice to keep some of my pictures or whatever. But like, Lee and I have talked about this. It's like we've just have lost so much over the years that we just have this attitude of like, this is just stuff, and the world's passing away. So we need to guard our hearts, like the Bible says, against all kinds of covetousness. That's what keeps us from giving. It's this protective covetousness, like I need this, I want this is mine, and we need to really just change that attitude toward, like Paul talked about, like we give everything to the brotherhood or to those in need, because God's going to richly bless us. I shared that Proverbs 19:17 is one of my favorite verses in the Bible.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, he who gives to the poor lends to the Lord, and the Lord's going to repay you back. Like God is saying, hey, can you spot that guy $5? Because I'm up here in heaven and I can't really give it to him, but you can give it to him for me and I'll pay you back. Right? That's kind of like, that's a kingdom principle. So
Yep.
I always think, well, when I'm giving, I don't do it for the purpose of like, well, I know God's going to pay me back double, so like I'm going to like gamble or something. I just know that if I respond and give, then God's going to take care of me as he promised. That's the kingdom principle. So that's
Yeah,
my speech.
that's cool. Yeah, that's really good. That verse in Proverbs is really good. It's one of those verses to just kind of meditate on for a while and think about it. And it's like, oh, yeah, he's telling me something here. He's telling me that if I help the poor, I give to the poor, it's like I gave him a loan, like I loan him money. And, he's going to pay it back with interest. Right. And that's good stuff. Thanks, Suzanne. Dan is back.
Yeah, Suzanne just kind of reminded me too. I've tried to make it a habit. I carry a money clip in a little spot, and I keep money in two different spots, but I always try to keep a certain amount of money in the front so that when I see someone and if there is a need, then it just automatically, I'm already prepared to give. And one of the things I have to guard my heart against, we have a lot of scammers. We have, it's just a big thing that's gone around, people standing on the corner and they holding up a sign and, it's like, please help me and my 5 children, or, you see all this stuff. And I just saw some more stuff online. There's a thing that goes around and alerts people. The people, they go and they get money by doing that. And then they go and hop in their Mercedes Benz or their BMW and drive home, and we have another thing. We have a lot of what are called, it's kind of a slur, but gypsies, and they just kind of like come in droves, and so I have to really guard my heart because sometimes I'm like, well, these people are just scamming or something like that. But there are people with genuine needs, so that's where I pray the Lord to guide me and give me discernment, and that kind of stuff. So, just an observation.
Yeah, I think, sometimes it can be a little hard to tell, but I think I remember, I don't know how many times I've driven by people like that holding up a sign, and I'm just looking at them and I think there's no way that, you are obviously an able-bodied person. And and I remember this one time I was driving down one of the main roads here, and there was this family. It was a husband, a wife, and probably about somewhere around a 7 or 8 year old girl. And they were just walking along the side of the road in a place where you would not, I mean, there's a problem, right? And so there was a couple guys with me, and we turned around and went over there to see if they needed help. They couldn't speak English. They spoke Spanish, and my Spanish is not great, and so we're making it a little bit. And it turned out their car had a problem. I forget what it was, and they were, and I don't know what their story was, or anything like that, and who knows, but just being able to help somebody, and I'm sure I will never see them again until maybe the kingdom. And so every little opportunity, that didn't cost me anything but the gas it took me. I actually ended up taking him the next day to go pick up his car from where they were staying, and they didn't ask for any money, and but they did need help. It was obvious that they did need help, and and so if we're just constantly looking, there will be plenty of those kinds of situations beyond the things that were, I don't know about that. I've been scammed before. I'm sure probably most of you have been scammed before, and it's not a good feeling. And I didn't say this. There's so much more that we could talk about on this subject that I didn't touch on tonight. One of which is part of being a good steward is not getting scammed, is not putting your money, like, I think it's bad for a Christian to give money to a ministry that is doing bad things. I mean, that should be obvious, right? Why would you give money to something that the Lord would not want to be happening? So it becomes really important that when you're going to give money to a ministry, that you have done your due diligence to make sure that you understand how are they utilizing that money and what are they doing, right, with this money, and making sure that it's being used for God's purposes and not, for enriching, some guy or something like that. All right, Edgardo.
Thank you, John. It's a very relevant teaching, very timely. Uh, I thank God because you have touched First John chapter 3. The verse is 18, which says, let us not love with words or tongue, but with action and in truth. I think of giving as love in action. There was a saying that goes this way: you can give without loving, but you cannot love without giving.
Mm.
When you give, it's really an expression of your love for God and for God's people. Like here in the Philippines, there are a lot of needy persons, and they usually come to my house and ask for help. And it's the generosity of other people that enables me to reach out to them and also enables me to evangelize a lot of souls.
Mm.
Giving really has a big part in the work of the ministry here in the Philippines. Uh, Indeed, God is using people's generosity to establish so many ministries. Uh, it's really a big thing that we know how to give, and we understand that if we give, we are following the example of God our Father. He was so generous for giving us His Son. And when we give also, we are following the footsteps of the Lord Jesus Christ, giving His life for people to get saved. And I'm so happy that this subject is uh, shared here, because it encourages us to continue on living a life of generosity. I thank God for the subject. Thank you, John. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Edgardo. Well, I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and wrap up the recording. This is the recording here for the the discussion. If you haven't seen what the other video, go back and watch the main video. And but if you'd like to join the discussion, and we definitely encourage not just this discussion, but discussion and the Allegiance to the Green group on Facebook and YouTube, wherever the discussion may be taking place. You know, we don't ever want to be the kind of people at Allegiance to the King. We don't want to be the kind of people who shy away from, people's questions, hard questions. And, we can't always know if we're exactly right on something. And the best way to be a truth seeker is to welcome, challenges and things like that. So please join us in the conversation.